Hello, welcome to Conversations with the Voice of Reason. I am your host, Benjamin Boyce, and today's conversant is Warren Smith, who very recently went viral for a tiny little clip that he posted to his tiny little YouTube channel of him speaking with a student of his through the question of whether or not J.K. Rowling is so-called transphobic. In that clip, Warren executes the Socratic method with grace and patience, and over the course of those couple minutes, the student of his own accord changes his mind. Well, that clip gets picked up and shuffled all around the internet because, lo and behold, people thinking critically is just so novel nowadays. And as you would imagine, the people whose ideology is threatened by critical thinking have now targeted Warren and have tried to cancel him, like get him actually fired from his job. I reached out to him. He was gracious enough to grant me an interview. And in this interview, we talk about his life and how he came to believe what he believes and how he thinks and what his goal and role is as a teacher and as a filmmaker as well. If you are interested in Warren's work, links to his YouTube and Twitter are down there in the description. If you appreciate this channel, consider donating a bit via the tip jars linked in the description, and like and subscribe and all that fun stuff. Without further ado, here is Warren Smith. Whereabouts are you?
I'm in Massachusetts.
Are you fond of that part of the country?
I am. Yeah, I'm originally from North Carolina.
Huh.
So came here for graduate school.
And you just kept on graduating?
Yeah, basically. No, 2016, I was looking at different schools, got into three, and one was in Baltimore. And looked at that city, looked at Boston, just really loved Boston. There's all kinds of history here. And yeah, I love New England. It's cool.
Why did you choose graduate school of all the things that you could do? You could have gone into the military. You could have started an Etsy shop. Why graduate school?
Good question. I went to undergrad for filmmaking and then had some experiences after that, went out to Hollywood, did that whole thing. And after a few years, I knew I didn't want to live in LA. So my parents were both professors. So I was like, oh, teaching's a really cool career. And to do that, you need a master's. And it was just kind of a sensible next step. And I also got a half-ride scholarship. So it wasn't too unaffordable. Mm-hmm. So it was just an opportunity that I decided to take. Yeah.
What branch of academia did you go into?
So I was doing visual media arts, which is basically their film school. That's what they call their film school.
Yeah.
And so I just kind of continued that trajectory of filmmaking. And then I started working as a TA, thinking I would teach film studies at the college level. And I started doing that, but I'm not tenured or anything. I started teaching. I've always been teaching at Emerson, like one class a semester and then some intensives during the summers. But I started teaching full-time high school after graduating. And right before COVID, that was my first year teaching when COVID hit.
How did you take to that high school?
It was interesting. It was cool. It was, yeah. Yeah. Is this the show right now?
We're just going to cut right in because you just started being interesting. Sometimes it takes people a good 10 minutes to get interesting, but you're already interesting.
There's just the only things I can't talk about are the school doesn't want the student ID'd or the school, but
okay.
I can talk about everything else.
So Emerson is part of
Emerson's public record already.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, that's not where the video is.
Well, I mean, the viral incident is nominally why you're here, but I'm really just interested in who you are, what you actually think. Yeah,
it's cool. I appreciate that. That's a nice approach. It's good to get away from that talking about the video over and over.
Yeah, I bet. Good video. Did you have any idea that you would be shaking the foundations of Western woke thought?
No, not at all.
You weren't being taking a page out of Socrates' book and you're like, I'm going to gadfly the sophists.
No, it wasn't. No. I thought it was interesting, so I posted it to my teaching portfolio, kind of YouTube type. As a filmmaker, I was telling you about how filmmaking, and I've been posting my short films that I made back in undergrad and that I've been producing on my own. And because a filmmaker is nothing without an audience. And I do think YouTube is a remarkable technology, a Gutenberg revolution. It's the democratization of video. It's just remarkable that we have the ability to reach an audience now. So I would have been a fool not to play with that technology. I never expected anything to really occur, not from a video like that. That was, I used to enjoy posting some lectures and things, but that's kind of how that came about.
Somebody was being snarky in my retweet of you. And part of the reason I reached out to you, because you just published a video a couple days ago responding to some threats you were receiving, and there was a freshness and I'm sorry to say, an anxiety, like you were really nervous. I'm like, there was something very alive that you were communicating, but your production values were just excellent. This great microphone, great camera, great angle, the color grading was excellent. And somebody snarkily replied, "Oh, this is really fortunate that he just had all this set up to make this video when his other video went viral, whatever." And now it turns out you had all the equipment anyways before any of this. You've already...
And I say the word filmmaker, but it's not film, obviously. It's all digital now. Okay. That's been my passion. So it all just kind of lined up. And I was like, whoa, opportunity. I'm going to see what I can do with this, because there's no going backwards. There's no putting the genie back in the bottle, and everyone at work knows about it, and for good or bad. So, and I would be a fool not to, I would regret not seeing what comes out of it and taking the shot. Yeah. That's like when that Piers Morgan interview happened. I mean, that was a day after the school found out. And then literally the next day I went and did that without talking to anyone. And they were like, yeah, I don't even know if I should talk about this, but they were like, dude, what the hell? Like, you at least run it by us. I was like, what does this have to do with you though? But anyways, I forgot. Sorry, my phone.
No, have you been following this so-called culture war much? Like, are you on X?
I know what you mean by culture war. I think, I know.
Do you shit post? Do you have an alt? And don't answer if you do.
I hadn't been using X for 3 years before. The only reason I got back on X was after Elon tweeted that.
Oh, shoot.
And then my brother, who's savvy at all this, he's like, dude, get going, find your old account, do something with this. I was like, makes sense.
Okay. So you had no idea. Well, I guess you had some idea that there's a lot of turmoil going on, a lot of cultural conversation going on. I'm sure it's reflected in the work you do with teens and the work you've done with media. You were in LA, so.
Yeah.
Did you have a strong position? Have you had a strong position in this, or are you just kind of watching it from the sidelines?
I never really thought about it until I went to graduate school in 2016. And shortly after arriving at that college, I started to notice certain things that caused me to start questioning presuppositions that I had myself. Things such as telling people certain students had certain value based off the color of their skin, whether or not you can participate in a conversation, and if so, how much you're allowed to talk. Certain events are, like the famous incident at Evergreen College with Eric Weinstein, or was it Brett Weinstein?
Brett Weinstein. Do you know who I am? Just question.
No.
Okay, cool. Continue. I'm the major documentarian of I was there when it happened. I compiled.
Oh shit! I recognize. Yeah, I saw your documentary.
Okay, there we go.
Dude, that was great. That had a massive impact on me. I was blown away by that. Okay. The fact that they would be like, okay, all white people stay home, please. That's amazing that you did.
And you saw that.
Really, I did see it. I saw that documentary. Oh, I didn't see anything. Not
to that extreme, but you kind of saw
to that extreme. Yeah. That was what happened at Evergreen was. I did see some pretty. That was epic level. The smaller things that it was more contained and subtle. And
what was your? Do you remember like the feeling that you get when you'd encounter that, like annoyance, cringe, like what are you guys doing? Worry? What?
It was. There was a protest. There was a faculty assembly, and about 300 students and some staff came in with placards and things saying Emerson's racist, and that kind of sparked a conversation that I started to see some major changes after that. And I was taking a pedagogy class with the dean, the undergraduate dean. He teaches one class a year. And he was teaching this class. And the day after this protest happened, we had class that evening. It was a 3.5-hour class once a week. It's about 12 people in the class. And they brought in the person from the Office of Diversity and Equity, and where you make your anonymous bias reports, and the Office of Diversity, Inclusion, whatever. So they're there leading this discussion. And that was the first time where there was 2 other white students in the class, and we were told to just listen and to allow our space to provide other space for other people. Yeah. And I was just thinking, I had never thought about this before. I was thinking, that's fascinating that you're determining a student's voice based off of the color of their skin. Isn't that kind of, didn't say this out loud at the time. I was thinking, there's something wrong about that. What is it? Oh, that's treating people with value based off the color of their skin. Isn't that like literally contradictory to everything I thought was right and wrong about racism?
Yeah.
But then they went around the room and they just wanted to hear from anyone who wasn't white, basically, to hear their perspectives. And at the time, I was genuinely feeling for all, and feeling for all of them, being like, because their claims were, it's so difficult being a student at Emerson because it's so racist here. And I was just thinking, this is one of the most liberal colleges in the world. I know Evergreen is considered the most liberal, but Emerson is up there. It's up there. And it's an art school in Boston, a communication school. I was listening to their claims. There was nothing solid. Some of the students started a Facebook post where they would try and quote their teachers possibly out of context, trying to get them in trouble. And I was just thinking, that's kind of a strange tactic. Anyways, that was the first. That really stood out in my mind. That really does. I can visualize it vividly if I close my eyes and go back there. And I remember even the dean seemed shaken by it. And I rode the elevator down with him after class. And we were sitting in the room, and the head of the office, the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion office, was talking about decolonizing the canon. That was his big project prior to all this, just decolonializing or colonizing the canon.
Yeah.
And I remember him in the elevator, he goes, oh, decolonizing the canon, like thinking no one, and I was standing there next to him. I could tell something was off about this. He was frustrated by it, but there was a fear amongst teachers to say anything to break ranks. And I started teaching as a TA, and I was going to be given my first official class about a year later. It was actually that same year because of the fallout of that affected it. And the teacher who I had been TAing I was there for 3 years. So my final year, about to start teaching. And she had a student who wasn't showing up to class, wasn't doing work, and she was going to fail them. And I was going to be taking over the class in the next semester, and she was giving me her advice. She was saying, hold students to standard. Don't be afraid to call them out. And then that protest and everything happened I was telling you about. Now we're 2 weeks later, I'm about to start. And she goes, remember that conversation we had? I was so wrong about that approach. It's so important to be empathetic and put yourself in their shoes, because that student looked at me and told me, yes, I'm not coming to class. And I know I'm not doing my homework. This is an undergrad student who's living in the dorm. I'm not coming to class, but you don't understand how hard it is to be Black at Emerson. And so I didn't fail that student. We made accommodations, and I was just thinking, what? Like, okay. I didn't say anything at the time. But if the student had a different skin color, would they have been failed? Why are grades being assigned? There just has to be some objectivity in all of this. And I understand the nobility of the intentions. I understand the nobility of the intentions behind equity, which is different than outcome, which is outcome, which is enforcing the outcome rather than the opportunity. but I understand the nobility of the intentions, but there's something within the very mechanism itself that I don't think is sustainable. And then I started to experience firsthand. It just felt off. And then I would try and talk about it to people, talk about it to my family even. And they didn't believe me that this stuff was happening. And I remember what happened at Evergreen. And I was talking to my mom, who was a professor, and I showed her that story about Heather, and I showed that your doc. They didn't believe it when I tried to explain that there was this day. They didn't believe it. You know, so. I forgot what the question is.
Well, the question's wide open. So it sounds like you were kind of like, there's something off about this, but there's a chillness in your voice. I don't know if that's like a demeanor that you've cultivated for this moment in your life or something like that. Because you're now supposed to be like the critical professor. Like that's your brand. I'm ribbing you. I'm ribbing you. You know, but are you worried about it? You said it's not sustainable. What if every major, let's say, college of education is completely captured by this ideology? Like, is that what's the downstream effects of this?
Well, they already are. It's become the universal mode of thinking. It's infiltrated. It's not the right word. It's just become the norm.
The universal mode of thinking.
It seems to be the standard, we should say.
Okay. The
standard way of thinking. At least, I'm sure there's exceptions in certain parts of the country, but in Massachusetts, at colleges where I've been to and from what I've heard from others as well, it's, from what I've seen with my own eyes, it's the norm. Where I'm at Emerson, it's the norm.
So is it proper to call it a way of thinking? I mean, is it thought? One of the things that you said and that you've said is like critical thinking. I love asking people what they mean by critical thinking, because that's a very vague term. We know what critical theory is. I mean, if you do the research, you can figure out what critical theory is. But what's critical thinking? And is critical theory, or is this dominant paradigm, is it a way of thinking? Does it have the same kind of constitution and intention as what you call critical thinking?
I think, to me, critical thinking is the ability to arrive at the best decision given what is presented. So it's not always about dismantling a presupposition necessarily, or a political argument or a debate.
Okay.
Sometimes there's options laid ahead of you, and you have to say, so I was in an interview yesterday talking to someone, and they posed the question of, well, if you don't push back on pronouns in the classroom, where do you stop? Why can't you? And I was thinking, and my position was, I can't die on that hill, the first hill I get to. Yes, if I have students in my classroom who want me to use a pronoun, I have certain expectations as a teacher. If I were to refuse to do that, especially at Emerson, I would be fired. Right now, so I'm not going to, as long as it's, so there's the famous case with like Jordan Peterson, for example, where it became Bill C-16, it becomes opposed by law. Now he takes the stance. They say, you refuse to use pronouns. I never refuse to use pronouns, he says. In my classroom, if it's a one-to-one, eye-to-eye contact, I'll make that decision. That's up to me. It's not imposed by law.
Okay.
And so, I agree with that, because if I did die on that hill, my argument was that if every teacher who was willing to push back on any of this were to die on that first hill that they encountered, there would be no teachers that are willing to push back teaching. Let's take K through 12. If they can't get past that first hill, there's no one teaching these kids.
Okay.
Who, you see what I mean? So what are the larger implications? That's critical thinking. Be able to game that out, and to think about, there's no perfect option. Okay. Winston Churchill saying democracy is the worst form of government except for all the others. There's still going to be drawbacks. Mm-hmm. It's what is the least bad option for the long term. That
Okay.
comes from, yeah, playing it out.
Okay. Well, then what is the long-term goal as a teacher then? If you game that out? And just career-wise aside, golden watch or
Yeah.
whatever they give teachers nowadays aside, pension, whatever aside, like what is like the arc of being a teacher for you?
Be able to make the largest impact to as many people as possible in its most simple form, I think.
Okay.
Which is why I think I'm so fascinated by YouTube originally. The fact that you can, if you record a lesson, record a lecture, if people find value in that, you can now reach more than 10 people in a classroom. Whoever's going to watch it, there's no limit to that. That's a remarkable thing to me. Now working with K through 12, and I can't get into the curriculum specifics of the school and everything, but it's different than working with undergrads. I mean, I worked with undergrads as a TA. The work I do at Emerson is professional studies. So they're working professionals who are taking a class to get a professional certificate, a filmmaking certificate. So it's a script to screen class. So they're trying to hone a specific skill to enhance their professional practice. In the summers, I teach a 3-week long, it used to be a 5-week long intensive. They call it pre-college. That's high school students, pre-college, that are living in the dorms for 5 weeks doing an intensive course, filmmaking. So I'm primarily working with that age group. And with that age group, I see it as trying to, as best I can, prepare them for life, for becoming adults. Essentially, that's okay. Most basic.
Then I was going to ask you to define impact, and you've done that. And impact is chained to creating adults. So what is an adult? What is a good adult?
Yeah, what is a good adult? That's a good question. I think this word autonomy keeps coming to my mind. I was asking myself this actually earlier. I don't know how. But why is autonomy so fascinating to me? The ability to be self-sufficient, which comes being able to think for yourself. But so an autonomous filmmaker, for example, has the ability to raise finances, write a screenplay, execute the screenplay, and reach an audience. Now, traditionally, that was required by gatekeepers. You had to have distribution, you had to have financiers, studios to produce it. And being in Hollywood, I witnessed the frustration by so many filmmakers in that system where they were struggling through the agents. An agent's job is to be the gatekeeper and to cross.
Well, they sell themselves as the key masters, but they're actually the gatekeepers, right? We'll give you access, and we won't give you access. It's like a double.
Because when I was an assistant to a talent agent, and we would get unsolicited screenplays sent to us all the time. We don't read them. We're not told not to read them because that opens up to lawsuits, but their policies, we don't take any unsolicited material.
Yeah.
So then I would get the question, well, how do I get an agent? If you won't read my screenplay unless I have an agent, how do I get? It's a catch-22, and it's most at its
pre-gent. What do you do?
There's no real answer to that. The best answer is do something off the wall and get them to come to you.
Okay. Yeah.
And which is not really an answer, but it's the best I can formulate.
I wanna avoid vulgarity, but either you do something to serve them, or in a very obsequious manner, or you either ingratiate yourself to them, or you
have to have value. You have to have value. So look, this little viral video thing. All right. It goes out. How did it find it?
Do you know how did what? Who ripped it? Do you know how it jumped?
Lee Harris, who actually I did an interview with, and I'm not bitter at all about that, honestly, because had he not done that, none of this would have happened.
You got discovered. So you haven't, you're content minded now. You're not in the Hollywood system. You're content minded.
No. Yes, correct. I'm not in the Hollywood system. But
Which means like, and by that I mean just evoking that you write a script. There's all these unions and agencies and all that stuff where intellectual property rights are really tightly controlled and held because there's a lot of money at stake. In content land and YouTube land, it's just like you throw things out, and if it gets shared, like that's what you want. You just want your stuff to be shared, and then eventually it leads to.
Well, this is the example I was trying to give you. So that little video, it goes viral, all right, and so now suddenly I get approached by an agent, for example, and I'm not going to go into if not an agent, other people are now approaching me because they see some value, whatever, whether or not it's actually there. It's perceived value. Yeah. That's my example of it. If you can do something off the wall, or I use that as a euphemism, but make a movie yourself, because now you can. You just a moment ago, you commented on having you have production value. I can see it in your room. Like you can have audio, you can have video cameras that can shoot 4K and better. So you have the ability to do things that we could not do 20 years ago. We could not.
Yeah.
So I forgot where I was going with that.
No, well, this is really, it's a really good conversation because it's going to lead us to a lot of other places. But the other day, I just inherited a couple of, I'm a stepfather, which is kind of a new development in my life. And I've worked with kids a lot, so I understand how kids are. But now that like I'm living with kids, I'm understanding like if something... and one of the aspects of me becoming an adult was realizing nothing gets done without somebody doing it. Like I have to actually take the initiative, and like instilling taking the initiative. And it really folds into your autonomy, but it's just such a novel thought. I suppose probably for today's generation, like everything is so given to them that they have no idea what it takes to make anything, right? And they're given more and more capacity. The internet was supposed to give us great capacity, and it does, to produce things. But unless you do it, it doesn't happen. Unless you do it, doesn't happen. Now, that's the first thing, is to have initiative. But then you have to overcome the hurdle of, like you said, a filmmaker isn't anything without attention. Like you can toil for 20 years writing novels. Nobody sees them. You're not really a writer until anybody sees them. So there's that getting the attention thing. Then there's following through. Then there's understanding how to do it. Being a teacher has got to be really amazing, because there's so many different things to teach, and you can just focus on technique, but technique is just one aspect of...
I really enjoy it because it allows me to do what I love. And it, first of all, allows me to do what I love, have access to cool equipment.
Yeah.
Work with young people who are trying to achieve the same thing. And it allows you freedom of schedule, having vacations, holidays, to pursue other things. So it's a great job for someone who's wants to be an entrepreneur as well and do other things. And who knows where that's going to take you. So it was a great fit for always trying to write a movie and produce content. And a movie I've been working on for 4 or 5 years now, the Secret Scholar Society, which became the name of the channel. And there's a little short, rough little that we just produced, a friend and I, just before all this happened, like a month ago. We posted it, and it's sort of just a 15-minute version of I would like to turn that into a full feature. And that's a huge goal of mine. I've kind of been sidetracked now with all of this, but someday I want to really do that.
Why filmmaking then?
Oh, that's a question that I've just, ever since I was a kid, it's all I've wanted to do.
Were you running around with the Super 8?
Not a Super 8. I had my old camera over there, little cassettes that it wasn't Super 8, no, but iMovie, one of those colored blue iMacs with the crazy pastel colors. Yeah. My parents had one of those. I found iMovie, started editing. I ran around with my friends, essentially like doing Super 8. Yeah, just digitally.
What about when you think of the history of film, what's your what would be your influences, or not just influences, I suppose, but just like the stuff that you really like, what you really
Heath Ledger had a huge impact on me, and I'm not sure why. Yeah, that was the lead.
Did he make any films himself? Did he get a chance to direct?
He directed. He was working on a screenplay. Huh. He was. This is interesting. He was developing what became the Queen's Gambit. He was going to direct Queen's Gambit.
Oh, really?
As
probably not as a series. Yeah, as a film. Right. Yeah.
He directed a short, a super experimental black and white, might have been on film. You know, some people say, oh, it's too dark and it shows him committing suicide and things, but he was just kind of an artistic, he was a little out there in those ways. And I just really, I don't know why he had his bravery has such an impact on me. Seeing Brokeback Mountain had a big impact, just being like, whoa, he put himself out there. And I don't know. I honestly don't know why him so much. But obviously everybody, once he did Joker and The Dark Knight, everybody started, he died at that point, but I had been following him for years before that.
Really? Ever since 10 Things I Hate About You or something?
I mean, probably Monsters Ball. I mean, yeah, I knew about him from then, but that wasn't what got me into it. It was like things like Monsters Ball and Candy, these little smaller projects that were kind of gritty. It was gritty indies that we don't see as much anymore.
Yeah. When was it like you saw yourself in him, or was there something
Possibly.
about him like
probably a little bit? Yeah. I wanted to see myself in him a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was that like contra to who you perceived yourself as a teenager? Like, were you the opposite of what you saw in Heath?
No, it resonated because I saw some of myself already there. It kind of reflected back to me. I was pretty introverted, but my friends were I was in the cool crowd, but I was going off to boarding school, and I was just this, kind of the indie vibe or whatever. And I don't know.
Huh.
But yeah, I was a little quiet and everything. And you had mentioned my demeanor. This is just, I've always been like this.
I know. I'm sorry to bust your balls like we're strangers, but
no, whatever.
Huh.
When he died, because I was heading off to film school pretty soon after that. I knew, yeah, that's what I wanted to do. That was
okay.
Yeah. If I could have done anything back then, it would have been an actor to be like him, but I never strived to be an actor for some reason.
Okay. Well, I wonder, what are some of the character building aspects? This sounds like a cheesy question, but what are some of the character building aspects of filmmaking?
What do you mean character building? Like, characters within the movie?
No, like, what has it, what are some of the ways that studying film and then engaging in the practice of filmmaking, how has that developed you or changed you, or in what direction have you had to grow as a person? Like, this is a really cheesy question. I'm just wondering. No.
It's such a cutthroat. Hollywood is such a cutthroat industry and a cutthroat game. It's a rigged game. It's the most rigged game I can even. It's so predominant. Like we were talking about with agents before.
Okay.
And you've got to have, getting your foot in the door. And the Oscars, which gets nominated, it's so artificial now, and there's
it's super artificial now.
Agenda behind.
Yeah.
Behind everything. But I went through, adversity in that space. I feel like I accomplished a lot being able to even produce short films in undergrad. It was a miracle in itself. And I was on fire for a while.
What do you mean?
I was on fire. I wrote 4 screenplays, got 3 produced, all at UNC School of the Arts. And then right out of the gate, we graduated. I raised $25,000, got a crew of like 25 students together and produced and wrote a feature. And it's okay. It's not great. And we filmed it all where I grew up, around this cabin where I grew up in the mountains in North Carolina.
Yeah.
And
you were the director and producer then? I
was not the director. I was a producing student. I went into producing because I realized that is the big picture producing. It's producer's the first one in, the last one out. They're the one who finds the story and hires the director often. Yeah, if you have someone like Christopher Nolan, that's very rare though. That's what I realized. It's extremely rare for someone to be able to write a screenplay and then bring it to the screen. My big priority was take what's in here and try and get that on the screen. And I could do that by writing and producing. And if I had to bring someone else and be like, you're the director, and give them credit to direct, fine. I just wanted it on screen.
Huh.
So there was just some things when you have that many people, egos can get, it's an endeavor where egos kind of can clash and friendships can go awry. And so I found myself returning from the West Coast, not sure what I was going to do. And had to do some soul searching, and that's how I ended up going back into academia. I was like,
into teaching.
Yeah. I was like, it'd just be cool to be a film professor. Thinking that would be, and that was, I always was striving for that. And then kind of through those experiences I was talking about at Emerson, I started to realize me getting tenure is probably never, it's never going to happen. No one's going to hire me for tenure. And so and honestly, I'm happy with K through 12. There's a lot that goes with tenure too. A lot of stress and expectations. And it would be cool, but if they offered it to me, I would take it, but they're never going to. So I'm happy where I am though. Honestly.
Filmmaking, so many people and so much ego because the actors, and there's probably like a different type of ego at every step of the way. Everybody's probably got their egos going on and their little mini games and stuff. And like the producer, I guess are you kind of like the orchestrator of egos? You're like, okay, I'm going to try to get everybody.
You've got to, it all falls on you at the end of the day. The buck has to start with stop with somebody.
Yeah.
And that's like, so you see like the Alec Baldwin, that's why when something goes awry in that scenario, who does it fall on? So, but actors are such interesting people when you think about you've got to be a little bit crazy to be willing to put yourself out there in that way. And you've got to, but they're all very different people as well. But you encounter some very interesting personality types. There's a lot of vanity for sure.
Yeah. What about directors typically?
As far as personality
wise? Yeah. What kind of a person makes a good director?
Well, you got
your experience.
Who makes a good director? Oh, it's such a strange game though, that the best are the ones who have what makes a good director is vision. That's why a director is hired, for clarity, consistency of vision. That's why it's only one person, because it has to be cohesive.
Okay.
Right. But a great director is someone who has so much vision that they can write the movie and then bring it to fruition. But that's so rare. So someone like Christopher Nolan, for example, or Tarantino, that's the majority of directors are working directors in the same way working writers are, where they're just brought on to direct a pilot or an episode of a show, and then someone else directs the next one. There's not that same amount of ownership as an auteur who's writing this thing and bringing it to fruition. So they're very two different modes. And I realized that working at the agency, because we were working with screenwriters primarily, and most screenwriters make their money doing rewrites, second drafts, third drafts, polishes. They don't create the story. That's where the money is. It's about a paycheck at the end of the day. So
And a producer, what kind of focus or direction do you have? It's like, are you just the glue for the whole thing? So the director has his or her vision, and then the producer's kind of like the hen.
You're the business. You're the business mind of the entire thing.
Okay, so you're making sure
keeping the train running on the tracks in the right direction, balancing all the personalities. You brought in the director. You've packaged the whole thing because you bought the IP, the rights to the book or whatever, because you see the battle plan all the way to fruition to the point of distribution. You can see how it's going to make profit. You have to be able to do that, and that just making profit. Movies are one of the worst things. They say the third worst thing, or nightclubs, restaurants, and movies, I think, are the worst, something like that.
Worst investments? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. It's next to impossible to make your money back. And especially we're hearing now and more today. That's why we're seeing the movies being made the way that they are being made now. Because we cut out DVD sales. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm all for the democratization of all this and less gatekeepers. But if you don't
Yeah.
have the DVD sales, it makes it hard to recoup.
Yeah.
And so they're less likely to gamble on a movie like Monsters Ball, a little Heath Ledger indie, right? They want the superhero stuff because it allows them to make that measurement and know they're
Yeah.
going to get profit with more clarity. Right? You can't gamble as much.
What are your thoughts on the implementation of equity agendas within the movie business? It seems that is at odds with a business perspective. I'm wondering if
You
you
would
have any
think so.
insight into that. Yeah,
Yeah,
but maybe
it is.
it is a way of shoring up funds. I don't know. What do you think?
It's bad business, and they're realizing that it's social pressure, though. It's
From
in the same
whom?
way we were talking about it, like at the universities. Why are the universities this way?
Yeah.
It's not from donors, I don't think. It's not. It's because, well, universities, because they're trying to appeal to students, to recruit students. They need to have an image. Honestly, the students that are arriving there are arriving with this thought, this mindset
Hmm.
of, I need safe spaces. If there's a bias, if I recognize, I want someone to be able to report it to.
Hmm.
That's what they've come to expect. That's what they want out of their campus in the same way they want good food in the cafeteria. Does that carry over to the movie business? They're appealing to an audience in the same way universities are appealing to recruiting students. So
Yeah.
why is Kathleen Kennedy behaving the way? Why do the Oscars, let's take the Oscars. Why do the Oscars play at this game? It's the ultimate spectacle. So it's being shown out to all these people across the country. They want to look good. They want it's putting on a show.
Yeah.
Most of these people probably don't believe as much of this nonsense as they say, but it's putting on a show.
Yeah. But I guess so. I guess it's a bigger question beyond your and mine pay grade, but it's almost like, why would they appeal? Why would they try to make a show out of something that's unappealing? Right. And I guess they're relying on this virtue signaling stuff. I don't know. It's just more and more cringe. It doesn't seem to be as punchy and as valent. You know, if you look at where Marvel's gone, I guess you brought up Kathleen Kennedy. It's like, are you trying to cause people to watch this, or are you trying to attract people to watch this? Same with college. Like, if the colleges of education create a bunch of woke students, then the colleges of education are justified to create more woke students.
Yeah, because it feels so good to feel like you're doing the right thing, to feel like you're fighting. Let's just take racism. I'm against racism. I'll stand up for this. That's why we started seeing people when they accepted an Oscar. They started ever since the Marlon Brando move. Now they go up and they make a political statement.
Yeah.
Because it's why people virtue signal. This is my 10 seconds on stage in front of all these colleagues that I care the more about in this world than anyone else, is the approval of everyone in this room. And I'm looking out on them. What am I going to say? I'm going to make myself look good. I'm going to feel so good doing it. I am a hero with you all, and I agree. And that's virtue signaling.
Yeah. Huh. How have you avoided that in your own life?
Well, I've never got an Oscar. I never had to I don't know. That's a good question. I observe things, and I've come to peace with what I believe and what I think is right and wrong.
What's that based on, if you don't mind me asking?
It's a good question. There's certain principles that I do. You can never get rid of subjectivity completely in critical thinking, because that's how we come to terms with why we're engaging in critical thinking. The why. Why does this matter? Why do I want to figure out the larger implications for the long term? For me, I do think it's important that I genuinely believe that everyone should be treated equally, regardless of their race and their gender, sexuality. religion, right? I genuinely believe that, which is why I do have an issue when certain students are treated differently based on the color of their skin, because there's certain lines that I'm a big fan of Winston Churchill for this very reason. There's certain lines that cannot be crossed, regardless of the nobility of the intentions to cross them, regardless of, I can understand why it would benefit you and I want to help you. So we're going to make an exception here, but it's a slippery slope. And we have to, it used to be where we agreed on all of this, and we understood the importance of never allowing that line to be crossed. But now things have changed where the good intentions we're crossing that line out of an effort for certain good intentions. But again, the long-term implications of that. And I say Churchill because he was like, no, we won't negotiate. I don't care if we're all lying in our own blood. It's like, it's better to die for the long term. He's like, England will rise again. Like it's better to go down than to survive and appease and to negotiate just for our survival. Because what will the world look like then? He's like, it's better for us to, if this long story of this island is to end, let it end when we're all lying, choking in our, he was brilliant in his oratory, but there's a message there.
So you started this channel and you started putting clips up of yourself. What did you see when you started to watch yourself showing yourself to them? Like what's this is the meta, like this is the filmmaker critiquing the filmmaking. Like what was what did you see
bother me
you were doing?
When I'm acting, it doesn't bother me to watch myself. I don't act that much, but like for the Secret Scholars thing, that short film, it doesn't bother me when I'm playing a character. And I've been doing it honestly because I can't afford to pay an actor, and I enjoy. Like I was talking about Heath Ledger. That is, I think, a subconscious dream of mine ever since I was a kid. I think I did all of that in an effort to one day be able to be on the screen. When I was saying I wanted to take this and put it on the screen. Yeah. That's why I studied producing, so that I could make the freaking movie and be in the, you know what I mean? It was just a really crazy way of doing it. It bothers me more when I see myself in that viral video clip. I am uncomfortable watching that.
So I'm wondering about that. Like, so you're playing a teacher. Well, you're not playing a teacher, but you are playing a teacher. You're being seen as playing a teacher. So what do you see when you see yourself playing the teacher?
That's an interesting question, because I wasn't playing a teacher in that clip, though. I was just talking to a student. Honestly, I'm more comfortable if I am playing. That's why when I'm acting, I'm comfortable watching that. When I'm watching myself, it's strange because here I am watching Brett Cooper watch me, or Candace Owens watch me, or whatever. There were certain people covered it, and that was cool. But it's like, I would skip over when my video would come up and just watch their reaction. But anyways, I don't know why. I love what the Daily Wire is doing with filmmaking, though. We should talk about that at some point, because they're the only solution I can see is what they are doing is to take this game into your own hands, start making movies.
Lady Ballers or
Pendragon Cycle, I think, has the potential to make. I posted a little short. I was like, this is going to change Hollywood. It has the capacity to. It could go sideways for sure. They're entering the unknown. It could be embarrassing. It could be a failure. Snow White could flop. It could be, and man, best believe there's a bunch of people that would love to see that flop. They're hoping it does. It's a scary game. And I'm sure that she must be deep. She's probably scared. Brett Cooper playing Snow White. Okay. At the Daily Wire. And staking in the Pendragon Cycle.
Her reputation.
It's scary when you go on screen as an actor and you know that there's so many people that want you to fail going into it. And you're taking on something so iconic as Snow White. And you're taking on the weight of the culture war. You're championing Daily Wire, who is championing this idea of resistance in the culture war, of creating It's creating entertainment. It has never been done. No one has tried to compete with Hollywood in America. They do it overseas. No one's tried to compete with Hollywood here.
Hmm.
That's what they're doing.
Do you think that's viable in the age of YouTube? Do you think YouTube
Yeah, I think it's viable. I think it could work.
is a different game than Hollywood and what Hollywood does? The product that.
That's a good question. Is it different? The game is the same. It's creating a world for people to watch and engage in on screen.
Okay.
How that screen, if it's you're still going to be watching it on your TV or your computer. It's not that different. How they go about it's absolutely different. So now they might, I don't know what their situation is with the unions. If they're going SAG, I doubt it, that they have to be SAG sanctioned. People don't realize the magnitude of having to navigate these unions. The Producers Guild, the Directors Guild, makeup has a union. Everyone, IATSE, everyone's got a union, and now that drives costs up dramatically. Like we just saw the strikes happening and the negotiations that came out of that. And what came out of that was essentially very similar to diversity quotas, where they're cramming down. You have to have this many writers. And we'd have to go through and look at it. But that's essentially the mechanism. The number of writers doesn't matter. But
okay, but no, the end result of this that writer's block was just more equity, diversity, and inclusion. Is that what you're saying? Did they get like?
It's a similar mechanism. They're not saying the writers have to be a certain racial makeup. They're saying that there has to be. Because the strike was with the Writers Guild and the Actors Guild. So the writers are trying to make money, and the job security essentially is their priority. So you have to, if you're going to write a pilot, you have to have this many of our guild members work on the pilot, regardless of whether you need them or not. That is a similar mechanism. It's just a top-down enforcement mechanism. It's similar to kind of diversity quotas. Where it's top down. Maybe
there's some anarchist strain inside of me that just wants to blow up the whole system. It just seems like a rat's nest, and stacked and stacked and stacked and stacked, and like, go ahead and go woke and go broke. Like, who's going to miss you?
Hopefully that's the beauty of the competitive marketplace, is that it will eventually die out. And I don't see it sustaining, because that's what's so important about what Daily Wire is doing, is create an alternative. So now they have to compete. That's the competitive marketplace. If it's just Hollywood and they're imploding, it's still just Hollywood imploding. But if there's an alternative, now there's more. Now the implosion has larger ramifications. Because you have someone out there who's not playing by the same rules, but are delivering the same product.
Mm-hmm.
So that makes sense.
So in the world of YouTube, there are these talking heads. I guess I'm one of them, and now you are too. Have you done much interacting with them, like, watching your different film critics, or like the people, the YouTube commentariat?
As far as this viral video clip?
Well, I mean, the viral video clip is reminiscent of a clip that Jordan Peterson released before he went viral. And the clip where I first came across Peterson, it was in 2015 or maybe even 2014. He posted this video, 45 minutes on 3 sentences of Nietzsche. And it was just him talking. And the same kind of film setup as you. It's just the teacher talking to a student or explaining something to a student. And then he goes viral, and then he does all these videos with him talking into a camera, or sometimes there's an interview live with 2 people talking in the same room, but it's a lot of just Joe Rogan, this whole podcast thing. Like, you're in this podcast world. I'm just wondering, were you aware of that world? Were you interested in that world? Did you have
that's what's so remarkable about this is I never dreamed I would be I'm not part of it yet, but there's the possibility that perhaps one day I might be able to, and that is a dream I would really love to pursue, because I would regret it forever if I didn't try.
Okay. What is the parameters? I'm wondering if, and maybe on the fly, you can help me understand from the filmmaker's point of view, just as a media or as a product, like, what is the value of this mode, and what is it that it does? And
So, yeah, why is it that we watch, well, Jordan Peterson's that's a whole nother kettle of fish here, but because
Yeah.
there's so many people on YouTube, Brett Cooper, for example, why, and I do watch your videos, why am I tuning into what? Because it's personality. You get to feel like you don't know them, but you feel like you subconsciously, I think you do. And so why am I tuning into Brett Cooper's reaction? So something happens. Several YouTubers now react so in the same way. We take that viral clip of me teaching. Now you've got these prominent YouTubers reacting to whatever's trending that day. And it's, oh, what's Brett saying about this? What's this person saying about this? And because you want their reaction, because you like their personality, you have a sense of rapport there. Now, there's also informational videos on documentary. Joe Rogan has a fascinating guest on, and Why the Dark Horse podcast. They delve into some really cool stuff. It's discussions that it's the accessibility to these things that we never had before. So just what are you looking for in YouTube is the thing. Is it just reactions, which is fun? Like when I'm watching a Brett Cooper video, that's the reason what we just addressed. If I'm watching Brett or Eric Weinstein, it's different. I'm looking for a different.
Yeah.
It's more of an intellectual curiosity.
Yeah. Yeah. What kind of stuff do you like? And if you had a podcast, which is like herpes nowadays, there's more people with podcasts than that little human.
My dream is, Jordan Peterson had a big impact on me.
Really?
Dave
when
Rubin,
did you come across Jordan?
Around that time, I was telling you the story about the protests at Emerson.
Yeah. Okay.
And I started, that was the time that I first stumbled upon him and Dave Rubin and what happened at Evergreen. And
But did you feel less alone or did you feel enlightened? What was the...
Yeah, it was a strange feeling because you get the sense that these are things, when you're listening to him talk, these are things I already know. I just didn't know how to articulate them. And I didn't perhaps realize that I knew it or the importance of it. So like we were talking about what makes a good adult, what makes an adult. Just the idea that happiness, all our lives we're told that purpose of life is happiness, chase happiness. And then it was suddenly such a revolutionary idea that perhaps it's not happiness, because otherwise just go do drugs and drink, because that's going to make you happier in that moment. It's the pursuit of responsibility and then meaning derived from responsibility. You were talking about that earlier, being a stepfather. And there's just these ideas that sound very rudimentary, and knowledge is such an interesting thing because once you know it, you can't unknow it. You don't forget it. It's not like you're memorizing a technique. And it suddenly comes out when you're talking to someone, like with that kid, or if I'm talking to my mom about something and I'm like, that doesn't sound right. Why do you think that? And then I'm talking about things that I'd heard these great people talk about, and I'm articulating them in a way that the other person can't even contend with. And I think there's a power in that. Therefore, there's a power in YouTube.
Okay. Interesting. You kind of went into like the weaponization of knowledge, just a little hint.
I don't know if it's weaponization. I think, how is it? It wouldn't be weaponization. I think because good ideas, it's like the competitive marketplace. We contend with ideas and figure out which ones are stronger than other, and the only way to do that is through contending with them. That's not a weapon. It's not about power. It's about figuring out the best choice to make for the wider implications for the long term. And that's not a weapon. That's not a conflict. That's a necessary dialogue, contending, two things contending. And some people do view that as conflict and then shy away from it, or say you're bullying me, or
Or you're trying to
or then they
win
get,
debate
yeah.
versus dialogue.
And that's that's a telling sign too, that there's something there. And then you just kind of ease off and it's okay because you're at peace with what's important to you. It's like, I'm trying to question this because I think that people shouldn't be judged based on the color of their skin. And this to me seems hypocritical to that. And then when you start going down that road, they start to get uncomfortable. Just whatever, pull back from it. It's your mom or your friend. You're at Thanksgiving or whatever. But that allows you to then suddenly you feel like you start to get this feeling that you're not bulletproof or a tank, but things just start, these other arguments, they just start to bounce off and then there's a power in logic. And I understand there's this fear around the word power. But that's another great thing Jordan Peterson talks about is that it's not power, it's competency. There's tyranny is a different form of power. Competency is another form of power. And when you have that competency and you are speaking to these people, things do just seem to bounce off. And it's fascinating how that works.
So we're discussing discussion.
Yeah.
And we discussed filmmaking. But filmmaking, I mean, discussion is contextual. It always happens within context. It's dramatic, usually. Actually, the context of discussion is drama. And filmmaking is all about the story, right? Yeah. So what is your relationship to story? And I want to ask a religious question because ultimately all questions of narrative are religious questions, which kind of they don't transcend logic, but they make logic. They deal with the why, I guess. Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering what your relationship to myth is, to storytelling.
Yeah.
And what kind of stories have like lit you up, that have driven you.
So this is all coincidental, perhaps. Harry Potter had a massive impact on me.
Oh.
Yeah, ever since probably if I were to choose one singular story that had the greatest impact, it was that one. And watching Jordan Peterson dissect archetypes with that was remarkable. That's when I started to realize, wow, that there's, like what you were saying about the mythos of story and these, because what was interesting is I don't think J.K. Rowling went through and listed out, oh, I'm going to hit this archetype of entering the unknown beneath the Hogwarts castle and facing the basilisk that could turn you to stone, or the piece of Harry Potter that's within him that he has to face and voluntarily walk to his own demise to be reborn like Jesus. I don't think she was doing that consciously. I think these are things that when you're writing a story, whether it's a screenplay or a book, and you're trying to connect with audiences, you're writing for yourself. You're writing, what's a story that I want to watch, I want to tell, which is perhaps another reason why a lot of these new movies aren't connecting in the same way, because they're writing it for someone that possibly doesn't, it's a different device. But if you are writing it for yourself and you're staying true to that, what resonates are these eternal things that already exist within us. You can say that about the Socratic method. You could make an argument, did Socrates invent the Socratic method, or did he discover something that was already there, like an archaeologist uncovering an artifact or a pyramid, or a mathematician discovering a mathematical breakthrough, a pattern that makes up our world. They didn't invent that theory. They discovered something already there, and then they give a name to it, and then it goes forth being known as that. I think stories operate in the same way. There's a saying that all stories have been told already, but there's infinite variations. But I think that at the core is how I would answer that question.
Yeah. Well, so Harry Potter, why then? What made Harry Potter a good adult? Danger?
Well, what made Harry Potter so fascinating to me wasn't necessarily Harry Potter, because Harry Potter is kind of a blank slate that allows us to project ourselves on him. He doesn't have that much personality. Let's face it. He's not an antagonist. He's not a deeply flawed. He's a blank. We project ourselves when we're reading that. We see ourselves in him.
Well, I'd rather see myself than Daniel Radcliffe, but go on.
Yeah. I think so it's not about Harry Potter. I think it's a world, the idea that there could be a magical world within our world. So it's not Lord of the Rings. It's not a separate fantastical world. It exists today. It could be over there. There could be a magic castle, this whole world right under our nose. I'm walking by these people every day. It's the longing for more, the longing for a magical, that there's more to this world than meets the eye. And then it could be right under our nose. And so the creation of the story that I'm trying to create with the Secret Scholar Society it's essentially the same mechanism. Just the secret society where scholars are essentially wizards. Because what's the closest thing we have to magic? It's knowledge and science. Some would say that perhaps magic is knowledge, science we just don't fully understand yet. The idea that science can be wielded. If you were to take what we know today as science, show it to people 200 years ago, they would think that was magic, your cell phone or whatnot. And so it still has that narrative device to it that's so cool. And so, that's why it resonates so much with me.
Well, this is interesting because you have apparently crossed some people who do believe in a secret society of oppression, and they call themselves the woke. I mean, they don't call themselves that anymore. They have to change their name because they keep on associating themselves with negative outcomes for some reason, even though they just want to pursue the glorious outcome of a utopia. But they see everything as a secret society of conspiratorial power dynamics where hierarchies are constantly oppressing people. And that way of thinking, I wonder if your generation, I wonder if Harry Potter has infected or affected you and your woke cohort in the same degree, like seeing or wanting this more, and the woke mind or what did you call it? You called it just this way of thinking that is prevalent in colleges and stuff. It is a way of looking at the world where it's seeing, rather than it's seeing dark magic everywhere, right? It's seeing this other thing, and then once you're initiated into it, then you really do have like this revelatory, like, I have to change, I have to dismantle, I have to disrupt, the system of oppression. And if you're white, I have to process it. Like with the Evergreen stuff, it was this religious fervor of realizing like, oh, I can now make of myself a sacrifice to change history now. It's interesting. I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that.
It's that same feeling as the person on the Oscar stage accepting that Oscar, who's making that declaration of a speech politically because of the feeling, the emotion, of being part of this thing that I think it's a desire for something larger than yourself. It's just the wrong way to go about it.
How do you think? What's tellingly wrong about it? Aside from the virtue signaling, which is kind of the vain part of it.
Being wrong about hierarchies and power dynamics where there are no power dynamics, and the demonization of competency and male strength. And I mean, there's flaws. We could sit here all day and dissect the flaws, but it's, why are these things appealing? Well, why has socialism been so appealing throughout history? Why is this a pattern we see happen over and over and over? We know both sides. The right can go too far. The left can go too far. There's an appeal to when it does, and I think we get caught up in it. But there's something to be said for feeling like you're part of something larger than yourself. And you're a warrior for that cause, a social justice warrior, some would call it, but they do feel that they are taking a stand. Again, you have to use those pronouns, and I'm going to yell, and I'm going to kick the speaker, and I'm going to protest. It's the same emotion that causes them to protest and to take to the streets, which is which is groupthink. Groupthink derives from something larger. The desire for it's a misguided desire, which is again what was so revolutionary about listening to someone like Jordan Peterson say, where it starts with the individual actually. And this is really foolish way to think about all this stuff with groups and generalizing people based on the color of your skin. That determines your ability to engage in a classroom. It's all connected.
Well, why are you predisposed to that way of thinking, like the individual? Like, is it something that you discovered or something that was instilled in you?
That's a good question.
And why would you be inoculated to that very fervent desire to change the world together with thousands and thousands of people and all the power structures?
I'm not inoculated. I just think the way I think about it is you have to understand the nobility of the other side's intentions. We all want a better world. I do think we all want a better world. We disagree on how to go about it. They think they're doing the right thing. They genuinely believe, many of these people, they genuinely will take away the Hollywood execs who might be just playing the game for business. A lot of these kids at these universities, what we saw at Evergreen, you saw that. They genuinely believed that they were doing the right thing. And that is what's so scary about it. And that's why we don't cross that line, like Churchill said, because it's such a slippery slope. And when it does go bad, it takes a long time to get there. But when it gets really bad. And now, why am I different? I've asked myself that. I think it started what we were talking about at the beginning of this conversation with what happened in the classroom, personal experiences. I witnessed things with my own eyes, and when it happens to you, it's different. So then when I try and communicate that, let's say to my mom, my brother, they genuinely did not believe it. My brother has since experienced things for himself, and now he is in the exact same place. He would be part of this conversation right with this, and he'd be aware on every frequency we're talking about, because he had to go through it himself. It's like someone who's trying to get them to go to rehab. They have to want it. Well, it's not the right analogy because they have to want it for themselves, but there's something you have to experience. You can't tell people that this is happening because it just sounds, and that's the power in it. It sounds crazy. But when you see it for yourself, you can't unsee it. And then you feel alone. And then you do some digging. And then you find people on YouTube. And yes, people say, oh, YouTube radicalizes people. Whatever, put that aside. You find people and you're like, this is sanity. Thank goodness. And you don't feel so alone. And then you listen and it's knowledge. You can't unknow knowledge once you know it. That has been my journey.
Well, you're describing another waking up process. What do you do with this knowledge? So another thing, and I know that it's a contentious term, the woke, I know that with critical social justice, whatever you want to call it, but there is a process of awakening to a truth, and that awakening to a truth comes with a dictate, an urgency to change and to fix the world. Right here, right now, to do something. You have to do something. You have to do the work. It's packaged in that idea and in that wakefulness. Whatever you're describing is another sort of like, okay, this is weird. You do it. I'm really alone. Okay, this makes sense. I understand. Now you have another kind of Gnostic insight. Your knowledge makes you different or see the world differently. What do you do with that knowledge? What is your responsibility at that point?
Your responsibility, this is what I would tell any student, is to you and your family, first of all, because you have to be, I mean, it goes back to that idea of you have to be in order before you can fix anything around you. You have to, you have a higher responsibility to you and your family than you do to fixing the problems of the world, because you have the actual ability to fix your own life and to be responsible for your family and to better your family for the long term, and those who are going to come after you. And that's an idea that is ancient. We look at past societies, feudal Japan. I mean, whatever documentary you've been watching recently, you'll notice this pattern. It was about the Medici, Renaissance Italy. It was about the family beyond a single generation. So, and there's things that you're not going to be able to fix these larger problems. Definitely, if you can't even fix yourself, and you can't be a responsible member of society.
Okay. Here we go. Here's another vague, responsible member of, you're saying the word adult again. What is the content? Yeah. And what have you discovered to be the content of that?
For me, it's when I have the responsibility to take an opportunity when it comes. So when this video went viral, like I'm doing this interview now, some would be like, oh, this is all nonsense. But I do feel that it's not just for me. I'm doing this for my family, because I have a responsibility to try and hit every target, to make the most out of whatever is presented, unexpected or not. So here I am to try and make the best out of it, because I would not be doing, I would regret it, and I would not be doing everything I could. So in other examples, I moved, and now I have the ability to join the fire department. Oh, cool. It's a way to contribute to the community, also make some money on the side, feel more satisfied. It satisfies a deep thing within me that is perhaps that masculine, an aspect of masculinity that we now shun. A lot of young men want to do something like that, whether it's the military or a lot of women too. So it fulfills a deep part of my soul. And that's being a functioning member of society. And I'm a teacher, but it's at the end of the day, it's still all for my family.
Okay. Is family the highest good?
Yeah, for me. Now, what if you're an orphan and you don't have any siblings? Well, then I think the best thing you can do is develop a family of your own eventually by strengthening yourself, which is why you have to be the best that you can be before you can even help your family. And then if you can really help your family, then you can help your community. And then if you can help your community, then you can run for an office or what. Then you can start talking about all this stuff that you're out protesting, trying to make these big changes in the world. And so if you don't have a family, find that family, find a partner, kids, 20 years. Now you've got the meaning.
So you're saying the proper order of life is go to school, get married, and then start a YouTube channel? Or have two babies?
If the opportunity arises and Elon Musk tweets about you, go start your freaking YouTube channel. With something like that, it starts with what is the most immediate thing within your ability to take action upon, and that's you. And then from there, it ripples out.
What's your family's origin? Where are you guys?
My parents
old school
were both
Americans,
professors, art. Yeah, we're Americans.
Like when did your phenotype deliver itself to these new shores?
I was born in 1987. I have a younger brother, 2 years younger.
But how many generations do you guys go back?
Know.
Do you know? You don't even know.
Smith. My last name is Smith.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know.
You don't know. You Mayfair, or maybe got conscripted at some point. Interesting. Okay. Your dad's from California then.
Yeah, he was in LA. He's a Hollywood. My granddad was the head of the art department at Warner Brothers. My dad wanted nothing. Yeah, my dad wanted nothing to do with that.
What did he end up teaching?
Wood design, woodworking.
No way.
At the college level, my mom taught metals design. Right, jewelry making and enameling, and then she's a hustler. She became the head of her department and started. Now she's doing a study abroad program in Italy for the last 10 years. But I grew up seeing them as teachers, so there's probably something there. That
were you guys religious at all, or
No, that's the thing is my mom used to try and take us to a church now and then because I think she just felt like that's what she needed to do because she grew up doing that. My grandparents were, and it never stuck though. I think it was just because she was doing it. Just recently, I was having this conversation with her. I was like, "Do you believe in God?" And she's like, "Oh, well, I think it's a good sentiment. I think it's good that people do, but she doesn't really." She's like, I was like, "Well, why not?" Well, because Christians just think they're better than everyone, and they just start wars, and it's these generalizations that perhaps that's why I've kind of gotten good at critical thinking because when your family is like that, you're constantly something comes up and you don't want to cause conflict, but you constantly have these things to engage with when everyone around you disagrees.
Okay.
That's how I used when this first started happening. I was like, look, Mom, I understand you think I'm crazy. Like she literally thought I was nuts for Jordan Peterson, blah blah blah. Yeah, she thought I was nuts, like for disagreeing. No one disagrees. No one in this world, like in that world. So I was just like, Mom, look about it this way. If every single person in my life, my best friends I grew up with, you, my entire family, if everyone disagrees with me, but I am still quietly at peace with an adamant that I have my reasons, you might want to look a little closer and listen to what I'm engaged in the conversation. Listen to what I have to say.
Yeah.
Because I think these things for a reason because I've seen these things. And I can explain it to you, but you have to be willing to engage in the conversation. And she has slowly come to realize, she's like, I do like Jordan Peterson. This is taken since 2016.
Peterson pilled her.
Yeah. She does think he's cool and smart and, but there's certain things she'll never budge on. And we're not even getting into all that.
No. Huh.
But yeah. Yeah.
There's something telling that you've brought up several times now, like a feeling of peace.
Yeah.
Like, did you discover that at some point in your teenage years? You're like, oh, that is where I stand now. That is where I stand.
Not in my teenage years.
No. Okay.
No, it was a sense of peace hasn't. Only within the last, I don't even. Only recently that I've been able to. I mean, because I'm at peace, but then I need to achieve. There's this.
Yeah.
That's
so I'm just saying.
I wouldn't say.
Yeah, but as a standing point, like it seems like you're describing phenomenologically what it's like to be close to the truth or aiming towards the truth or towards correct action, and you're using the term peace. It sounds like. So I'm wondering, like, how did you know that was the place where like your compass is pointing you?
Because all the bullets bounced off when I came under fire. When I would engage in these conversations, like we were talking about earlier, like the weapon of it. Whenever I would engage in a conversation with someone who disagreed, and I would do so very calmly and kindly, in good faith, and I noticed that it just bounces off because truth has that power, objective truth arrived at through logic. It's not so much that, I mean, some of these things we're talking about are my personal opinions and philosophies and takes on the world that I've developed. But if you're talking about these first principles, like don't treat people differently based on the color of their skin. Do you agree on that? Yes, I agree on that. Okay, but is this not contradictory? Blah, blah, blah. And it just crumbles.
Okay.
Okay. This seems pretty solid. And over the years, this happens again and again and again.
Yeah.
And if nothing, my mind is open to being changed on all things. He cannot change his mind, is never going to change anything. So it's just like we were talking about the least bad option. There's nothing better has ever presented itself.
Was there a particular moment where your worldview crumbled?
It wasn't a singular moment, but it was being at Emerson as a whole. Yeah. And that was a shocker. It really felt I get why there's that saying, the red pill right? And I know understand the connotations change, but
Yeah.
because it does feel like you're waking up to an illusion and you can't go back to sleep. And it feels like everyone else doesn't see it and they're just going along with it. And you want to be like, dude, what are you doing? Look. And they don't want to look and they're like, nope, I'm going to make this decision and go the other way. I'd rather not know.
Is that
I
not
feel
demoralizing for you?
it can be. Yeah, it did cause me to go into a dark place, but it's, yeah, it can be rough. Yeah, but I've been good at, we were talking about me as like a high school kid or whatever. I was at peace doing my own thing. Maybe that's why I echoed with Heath Ledger because it was just,
Huh.
I'm a bit of a oddball loner, I guess. So I was okay on my own. So
Yeah.
I was okay with it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, my well, when I try to figure out, or when I've tried to just think through my experience being at Evergreen and why that stuff just didn't make and continued to make no sense to me while more and more people were getting obsessed with that stuff. I had already, well, I was older, but I don't, well, one, I don't like groupthink. And when I feel in groupthink, because I did grow up in churches, going around in churches, and you see like every once in a while this groupthink thing starts happening. You're like, no, 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 we don't have to go that way to believe in God. You don't have to.
Yeah.
You don't have to do that to actually that's a sign that you're missing the mark somehow. So one, I just like I don't like it, but also I'm like fine, like no, I don't agree. No, I'm not going to use pronouns. I'm sorry, whatever. I'm not. I don't understand why it matters if you're white or black. I'm sorry. Like if that's an interesting story, cool. But I'm not going to give you more power over me. I'm not going to let you guilt me. My guilt, my shame is between me and my creator. Like it's not for you. Like don't even touch that because I know you just want to manipulate me. It's just
and God is like that too. It's a very similar feeling. Because you can't, so many people just shut off at the very conversation, the very notion of it. So you have to come to peace with it, being like, they're not going to understand it. And that's okay.
Yeah.
Because I'm in this game for me and my family. Okay. And then I'll go from there. So I don't need you to understand it. Like if you're at work and your boss or a colleague wants to exert control over you and feel like they're your boss, it's like, I'll let him feel like I'm not going to push back on it because it's the end result that matters. And it's something I've noticed. And I'd be like, why do a colleague was asking me about that. A colleague who I do trust noticed that. He's like, why don't you say anything to him when he does that? It's better not to, because that actually makes it easier to get to the end result. Don't reveal what you're this is going in another direction, but don't reveal what doesn't need to be revealed. When you're at work, you're playing a game. It's like a political game on a small level. Like everybody, so never reveal anything that isn't useful. Like let him think he's winning. Just what are you going to get out of pushing back or being like, no, God is real for this? Look, you're not going to change their mind.
Yeah. Huh. What do you, I guess this is all new for you. Where do you go with this? Are you just looking at, you just like this piece of kryptonite just landed in your hand. You're like, okay, what do I do with this?
All I can think to do is strive to live as forthrightly as I can, do my best, like we were saying, feeling like you have a responsibility to at least try and hit every target that presents itself. So take every opportunity I can.
Is there a piece of content that you want to produce? I know that there's the film there, but like if you were to just do a lecture series, what would it be on? Like if you had carte blanche and like a budget to produce things, what would you do?
If I could do anything, I mean, it sounds crazy, but it would be to do like what Jordan Peterson is doing or to work with them at the Daily Wire, like with what they're doing with filmmaking. It's so fast. It fits with everything my life has culminated in. Not that they would ever ask me to, or I'm even or I'm not on that level at all. I understand that, but it has even before any years ago. Well, I didn't even know they were doing the movie thing years ago, but it just aligns so well, the fact that they're doing narrative filmmaking, I do,
Mm.
as well as all of the other things that fascinate me. And yeah, Jordan Peterson, what he does is it's had a massive impact on me. And if you were like, if you could go do anything, working with those people would be.
Would you do Jordan Peterson the musical?
I don't know what that would even look like, but I would.
It would
I could
start
like
with
try.
Kermit the Frog singing,
Oh
"It's
yeah,
not
that could
easy
be
being
funny.
Grant." I don't know what it would.
The intellectual dark web, all those guys, man. That was just. It's such a
Hmm.
cool thing. So
Yeah.
yeah, let's see where it takes me.
Do you
Yeah.
have a piece of philosophy that you're particularly fond of?
Piece of philosophy that I'm.
Because you're very philosophical,
Yeah,
but maybe
it's
maybe it's more of a attitude that you've cultivated rather than a
well, just
pedigree that you've.
understand. Looking at the world, like it is a bit of a game when we're talking about these things. Like, don't reveal your cards, but there's certain truths that are eternal. One, I do believe is it's easier to be stupid than smart. Human beings are most people you can count on. Always, most people will take the path of least resistance. And it's easier to be stupid than to be smart. Therefore, I think this is another reason we're seeing everything. Therefore, most people are going to go that path, but don't do what's easy. Make the difficult decision for the sake of the future, not the immediate now.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Do you feel the need to write a book?
I never thought I would. Do I feel the need?
Do you feel compelled that is writing something?
I am interested in it.
Yeah.
I was approached, like we were talking about with agents and everything, about how a little flash in the pan silly thing that doesn't change who I am. I'm no more qualified than I was 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Why suddenly am I? But yeah, I was approached to write a book on critical thinking, and in line with my philosophies, I've been saying I would be a fool not to try and hit every target. So I'm going to
Yeah.
strive to do my best.
Okay. Yeah.
Keep you posted.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm working on
7
that.
steps of highly critical thinking. Or
Something like that. But I mean, and yeah, like 12 Rules for Life was that's changed my philosophy on like nonfiction. Now I'm actually, had I not read that book, I'd be like, gosh, this is going to suck. It's going to be like a textbook. What a boring thing to write.
Yeah.
But what he did with that book, that was one of the most interesting reads I've encountered. And it was a nonfiction book. So yeah, the goal is to create something kind of like, not that I will be able to do anything like that, but it's good to have a target to strive for.
Yeah. What a weird year. I mean, it's 2 months into 2024. I'm sure you had a different trajectory. You probably like, I'm going to try to do like 2 more scenes in the next 6 months or something.
Yeah, I was just working on that movie.
Yeah.
Which is already such a harebrained. That's like a metaphor for my life. Just these impossible harebrained ideas that the analogy for a movie producer, a teacher once told me in my first class at film school is there's a hillside covered with people. One person stands up, a crazy man just stands up and he starts dancing with conviction. Something's going on in his head. And then 2 more people start to dance, and then 4 people start to dance, and then more and more and more, and it gets bigger and bigger, and suddenly the whole hillside is dancing. That, ladies and gentlemen, is a movie producer. And I was like, so I don't know.
So you just started dancing.
Yeah, because I'm going to do it either way. I can't not. I'm going to always try, and if I can't do the movie, I'm going to try and write the book.
Yeah.
Like Harry Potter. And I want to tell that story so badly. And ever since I was, regardless of what I'm doing professionally, if I'm teaching, I'm still going to be doing that. And that's what I love about teaching, is it allows time for other things. But we'll see what happens.
Do you have like an oddball hobby, like archery or something?
I have tons of
shoot?
oddball. I had an archery phase. when I was a kid. Yeah,
phase.
recurve
Yeah.
bow. Yeah,
Huh.
my dad got into compound bow big time, and I have a lot of weird oddball hobbies. At the ninjutsu, and that's why I'm trying to get back into that. My brother does Japanese sword fighting.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Hey, you're the oldest, and
I'm the oldest by two
okay.
years.
So
He's
he's taking the mall ninja dream to the next level.
he went to Japan to study with Masaki Hatsumi to get his Shodan, his like a black belt from the last living. And he might be dead at this point. This is a few years ago. The
Wow.
last Grand Master of Ninjutsu lineage, family lineage, actual ninja.
Oh, wow. Okay. I will not pick a bar fight with your brother then, where I'd ever cross him if he goes to bars. Not that I go to bars. Yeah.
Uh,
Well, Warren, where can people find you on X and
yeah.
YouTube?
My ex is WT Smith 17.
Oh, wow.
Just because it was already there before all this happened years ago. Like I was telling you, I never used it. So my
Yeah.
brother's like, you got to go find this. I was like, God, that's an awful name. But anyway, so
Yeah.
that's what it is.
Yeah.
YouTube channel, Warren Smith Secret Scholar Society.
Oh, cool.
Or
All right.
you can just type in Secret Scholar Society. You'll probably
I guess
find it.
it's too early to say, and you're probably in the middle of teaching, and there's probably so many things going on. Do you have a production schedule for anything coming up? Is there
For the
anything?
movie, we've been just doing it on
Yeah,
like over
piecemeal.
breaks,
Yeah,
on the
okay.
weekends, after
Yeah.
school with
Yeah.
like one or two colleagues. So we're not in a formal production model like in the past. When I was producing a feature, it would be raise the finances, hire the crew, go flat out for 3 weeks, 4 weeks.
Yeah. Have you considered doing something regular with your academic content?
I would love to more. That's one of the things I'm not going to be able to record in the classroom anymore because of this. Just, not that the school,
Jeez
like,
Louise,
not
poor
that
guy.
there was any rules broken. It's just they were just like, whoa, this is big.
Yeah.
Got to run everything by us. No, it's just not going to be a feasible thing.
Okay, don't answer this question if you can't answer it, but I'm just curious. Is that student, what does he think about being off camera voice? And you don't have to answer it.
No, he's took
So-
it very graciously. I think he sees that as a good thing because it
Wow.
shows him in a good light. It shows his ability to reason,
To
And
change
he
his
shouldn't
mind,
be-
yeah.
he shouldn't be embarrassed at all, and he's not. And it
Yeah.
shows. I was trying to explain to the school that it shows that he has the. I should talk about this, but he has the ability. His voice has value.
Yeah.
His voice reached millions of people.
Yeah. Yeah. No. One of the things that has been robbed, and hopefully it comes back, but in the earlier, and I think we're kind of we're getting out of the early days of social media, but I mean, the first stage would be like, oh, it's fun and find old friends and post your food pics, but then something happened in 2015, 2016. It got heavily politicized. People started to see each other as effigies a lot, and a lot of the culture war stuff really distilled people down into like just data points rather than entire trajectories of thought. Like your opinion can be summed up in this one tweet, this one joke, and taken out of context because your life has no context other than that one statement. And the endeavor, or in order for the internet or social media to evolve, is to understand that social media users are they're human beings with a rich arc of change. And so that tiny little moment, I think one of the narrative values of why it took off the way it did wasn't just your handling of the situation or the content of J.K. Rowling, and if that, like there's a political valence to that, but it's that young man watching and allowing his presuppositions to melt and being cool with that, saying, oh, having that kind of like that miniature little eureka moment, which shows the human capacity for curiosity, for critical thinking, which another way of thinking, just like, oh, I can see it in more than one way. I have parallax. I have more than parallax view of this topic. So like there was a narrative arc in that really
exactly.
like,
yeah, there's a
that's what made it
beginning, middle, and
mythological.
end.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's like a 3 act journey occurred.
Yeah.
That's great. And I think it was bigger than J.K. Rowling. I said this in the Pierce interview, but I do think this was about more that it was kind of just a metaphor for so many other presuppositions, not just J.K. Rowling being transphobic or not.
Yeah.
It's just someone with a conclusion and there's more complexity and the realization. And that's when it's a rare thing, but when it does occur, it's beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Warren Smith, congratulations.
Thank you so much for having me. Like, it's truly an honor. Your work has had an impact. That's amazing. I didn't know that was you. That's remarkable. This is truly an honor. Seriously,
funny?
I can't tell you how much this means. Like, if you ever do get to talk to Brett, tell him I'm a huge, and Heather, I'm a huge fan.
Okay.
Seriously, they're part of that web that I was talking about that had a massive impact on me.
Yeah.
So just tell them thank you from the dude in that little JK video if they saw it or not.
Absolutely. I'll pass on. I'll pass it on. And you have a good night, and I hope to have you back. So,
thank you. Anytime.
The line's open.
This was great. Absolutely.
All right.
Reach out anytime.
Ciao.
Thanks. I'll see you.